Welcome back. Let's carry on with our discussion of categorical propositions. So in the previous tutorial, I introduced the elements of categorical propositions. So every categorical proposition can be analyzed in terms of these 5 ingredients: a subject term, a predicate term, a quality, the quality being whether there's inclusion or exclusion, so that's affirmative or negative, a quantity, the quantity is about whether we're talking about all or only some of the subject term, and a copulative verb. So now let's map this out and see how many different types of categorical propositions we can identify. So an easy way to think about this is if we have 2 quantities, universal and particular, and we also have 2 qualities, affirmative and negative, and if these interact together, then that gives us a total of 4 kinds of proposition, if that makes sense, right? So for instance, we have a universal affirmative in this block, and that's going to look like all S is P. Now here I'm using S as a generic letter to stand for a subject term, any subject term, and P to stand for a predicate term. So notice this has exactly the same form as all cows are mammals, or all C is M, except we're just using S and P to stand in for categories. And actually we do this a lot when we're looking only at the formal structure of something. We're just going to use variables to indicate placeholders basically for a subject term and a predicate term. So this gives us a universal affirmative. And the particular affirmative we've encountered too, we can write that as some S is P. Notice in what's different about these is not whether there's inclusion. Both of these involve inclusion. What's different is the quantity. So for all S is P, we're talking about every member of S. For some S is P, we're talking about some S. And this is a good time for me to point out to you that some in logic always means at least 1. It could be 1, but at least 1. So when we say some S is P, it could be that one single member of S is also a P, or it could be more than 1. But the point is some translates to at least 1. Okay, now let's consider the negative quality. This is exclusion. So for the universal, we can write no S is P, and that means that no member of the category S, the subject term, is also a member of the predicate term. And particular negative is going to parallel the affirmative, so we're going to have some S is not P. And again, the meaning of some in this particular case is at least 1. So we could also read this as least 1 S is not P. All right, and so actually, if you think about the fact that these are our only 2 quantities and these are our only 2 qualities, then it means that there are a total of 4 types of propositions. And these 4 types have historically been identified by vowels. I'll explain why that is when we get a little further to this. But the universal affirmative we nickname an A proposition. The universal negative we nickname E. Particular affirmative we call an I. And particular negative we call an O. Again, we'll talk more about why that is, but it all has to do with the way the medieval logicians elaborated and systematized Aristotle's original version of categorical logic. Okay, so this actually leads these 4 types of proposition. This leads us to a traditional way of thinking about the relations among these types. So let's look at this. Suppose we took a square and in each corner we put one of the types. Okay, I think this will work. So A goes here and E goes here. I goes here and O goes here. So now, again, across this way we have particulars. Across this top row we have the universals. This column is the affirmative quality. This column is the negative quality. So that means these are our four types. A is going to stand for universal affirmative. E is universal negative. I is particular affirmative. O is particular negative. All right, and so now let me get rid of these so we have a little bit of room. Now, for each one of these, we can write the standard form. So the standard form for universal affirmative is all S is P. The standard form for universal negative is no S is P. Standard form for I, or particular affirmative, is some S is P. And standard form for O is some S is not. That says not P. Some S is not P. Okay, great. So now this arrangement has a nickname. It's called the square of opposition. Why it's called the square of opposition, we will talk about in more detail when we start talking about inferences. But for now, it's enough for you just to know that this square is an arrangement of the four types with universals across the top, particulars across the bottom, and then the two columns correspond to the quality. So this column is the affirmative and this column is the negative column. All right, excellent.